Hi everyone, my name is Natasha. I am a researcher at the Singapore University of Technology and Design. Today, I will be presenting an online to offline community framework to promote social resilience in a post-pandemic age. This research is part of the New Urban Kampong Research Programme in collaboration with Singapore Housing Development Board, supported by Ministry of National Development. In my presentation today, I will be giving an introduction to Singapore's public housing, the premise of our research and our research goals. Following that, I'll be introducing our community enablement framework, supported by various prototypes that we have engaged to formulate and test our framework. To introduce Singapore is a small island in Southeast Asia with a growing population of 5.74 million with a land area of 782 km². In the 1960s, the Singapore government established the Housing Development Board, HDB, to provide affordable and quality public housing to its citizens. Since then, HDB flats have been the predominant housing option for the entire nation, with more than 1 million flats completed in the 23 towns and 3 estates across the island. HDB flats home close to 8 out of 10 Singaporeans, a total of 3.04 million HDB residents. Given that most of our population resides in HDB flats, this has made the design and planning of Singapore's public housing a focal point for community building in high-density housing models. HDBs are designed at a precinct scale of an average of 10 housing blocks each. Planning and design at this scale allows each precinct to be designed specifically for resident demographic groups. Our research aims to introduce more resident-based community building within the structured planning of HDB precincts. With greater exposure to instability due to factors like the COVID-19 pandemic, we see how resident-based community building can be important in ensuring resilience within communities to aid with such disruptive transitions. In addition, we see how COVID-19 is affecting physical spaces once deemed for community building. With social distancing enforced, we see gathering of localized communities diminishing. However, one thing we noticed was how online communities have developed and thrived in this new context. Mapping out local virtual communities that have emerged in this period, we can see the shift and adoption towards digital communities rallying together to meet new social needs. From platforms that collate and share words of encouragement, to social media platforms that publicize small businesses that cannot transit online, we see many more Singaporeans turning to online channels and growing communities online, both localized and nationwide. And in order to facilitate stronger communities, our research begins with the understanding of the different types of neighbouring that we see in our estates. First, there is the hi-bye neighbouring, where neighbours know and will acknowledge each other. Secondly, convenience neighbouring, where we see the exchange of favours and dependence on each other for emergencies. Thirdly, in activity-driven neighbouring, neighbours come together due to similar interests. And lastly, in intense neighbouring, we see neighbours who are personal friends. We acknowledge the importance of all the stages of neighbouring in a healthy neighbourhood, but we do see higher community bonds built at higher levels of neighbouring. With the aim to nudge residents to various levels of neighbouring, we catalogued various offline and online tools that will enhance such participation. Our role as community designers is to introduce these tools to empower residents into having a stake in community building. With this approach for building social resilience and a survey of offline and online tools, our research introduces a participatory action research project which aims to develop a ground-up O2O community enablement framework that strengthens social capital and community bonding in a post-pandemic age. So with this, I introduce the framework. Our framework consists of 5 stages which focuses on identifying and growing local assets. We see this in a cyclical relationship as sustainability is important for successful community enablement. So for our first step, we identify residents. In this stage, we identify what we call community champions, residents who have the desire to build their local communities and have ideas that need support. Secondly, we activate such residents by understanding their target community and developing their unique skill sets and assets. Thirdly, we build connections. Through digital and offline means, we expose these champions and initiatives to resident communities and gather both virtual and ground support. Fourthly, we integrate them into the network of local ecosystems. By aligning their goals with national goals, we are able to connect these resident-based projects with the existing organizations to ensure a larger network of support. And lastly, we sustain and influence. In this stage, we influence new initiatives to come on board and support with their own assets. This diagram shows our O2O enablement framework rolled out, mapping how online and offline tools are utilized. Through this, we also identify the different roles of participation played by our resident champions, from participants to co-organizers to co-producers. While the overall community enablement framework remains relatively intact, the targeted stakeholders and engagement strategies vary at different stages. I will illustrate the framework in action using the prototypes that we have developed with the community. I'll be sharing today about two of our prototypes, Project Zero and Social Deck. Both Project Zero and Social Deck are prototypes situated in Jurong East. Jurong East is an estate in the west of Singapore with about 78,000 residents and 23,000 flats in 2018. Jurong East is considered a middle-aged estate since its development began in the 1970s. The majority of the resident population is made up of mature families and elderly. The advantage of having such a developed town is a strong presence of community networks established over the years, a network that our prototype leveraged on. Project Zero was conducted in collaboration with a social enterprise Bold at Work based in Jurong East that has an established resident network. We developed a series of design facilitated activities to identify community champions and work with them to develop and launch their community initiatives. Project Zero consisted of 5 activities, and due to the COVID situation in 2020, we saw a push towards having to utilize both offline programming and digital platforms. The Scout was an open call to find residents with a passion to start something in their neighbourhood. There were 20 selected community champions with different backgrounds and interests. These champions were selected after a process of one-to-one interviews and fieldwork. The e-picnic was held as Singapore implemented tighter social distancing measures. As we could no longer host design participatory workshops, we experimented with utilizing digital mediums to create more interactive and engaging experience to harness stories from Jurong East residents. With 14 participants and 3 elderly participating, we collected information of community needs and preliminary ideas for initiatives. Next, in April 2020, we held the virtual walk, which was a check-in session with the champions to consolidate their findings and ideas. The discussion culminated in 3 main themes in which future initiatives were aligned with. These 3 themes were self-care, self-entertainment, and self-learning. E-Happenings was a series of online engagements where champions would create small workshops that leverage on their own skill sets to connect with other like-minded residents. From craft to gardening, these series of workshops were highly interactive and helped in the formation of new interest-based communities. In tandem with Project Zero, we launched our community app, our new Urban Kampung app. On our app, residents were allowed to browse happenings within their neighbourhood, join local interest groups, and connect with their neighbours online. We used colloquial terms to engage the public and organize happenings on the app into 5 types. The app focused on giving residents access to neighbours online for localized information which other social media sites do not specifically cater to. From finding a badminton buddy, posting about a lost dog, or wanting to deal with buyers within a proximity range, the app aims to bring neighbourhoods online. The 5 types of categories are: firstly, finding kaki, which is a colloquial term for finding friend. Second, town hall, for official news from local organizations. Thirdly, events, which are community-hosted events. Fourth, pasar, which is a colloquial term for marketplace. And lastly, just kepo, which means the neighborhood buzz. The NUK app launch coincided with the e-happenings, and hence they were used to publicize the e-happenings to Jurong East residents. Through the sessions, we were able to create interest groups, which we call kaki groups, formed by the champions or local organizations that have strong ties to the Jurong East residents. Our app also facilitated with these groups as it allowed quick dissemination of information to like-minded residents. Through gamification features, we were able to award thriving interest groups as they could cash out their points for vouchers. Project Zero culminated in Bazaar, a final showcase of different Kaki groups. In this fair, each Kaki group planned and facilitated mini activities in which the public was welcome to join in. This was a physical offline event which allowed residents living in the area to find out more about the Kaki groups and community initiatives. In ensuring the sustainability of this ground-up initiative, we ramped up the publicity by engaging local organizations in the area. The revitalization of Jurong East is seen in the map on the left, where each of the community initiatives and interest groups were mapped over Jurong East. The second prototype I'll be sharing about is Social Deck. Moving on from Project Zero, social distancing measures had relaxed, and hence there was an opportunity to transit back to activating public spaces. This will enhance community visibility and interaction. Social Deck is a roving installation which moves around Jurong East, turning void decks into vibrant social spaces. The Social Deck is an enablement kit which allows our community champions to run short-term initiatives in their own neighbourhood. The Social Deck is an enablement kit which allows for community champions to run short-term initiatives in their own neighbourhood. The Social Deck occupies the void deck spaces of champions' housing blocks to allow them to engage with their own residents. The Social Deck consists of 4 coloured panels, making the setup visually attractive, functional and flexible for programming. In total, the Social Deck moved to 4 different locations in the span of 3 months. And when we first began, we only had secured 1 location, but with the increasing public interest and popularity, we were then able to recruit more champions along the way. These are the 4 hosts of Social Deck. 3 of them were champions identified through Project Zero, and these hosts were in charge of daily maintenance of the Social Deck, ensuring tidiness and deterring vandalism. To briefly introduce them, we had Martin, who is a retired parks trainer interested in recycling and has begun collecting pre-loved items within his neighbourhood to distribute to new homes. Juliana, who is a passionate food rescuer that has a rack outside her house to give away ugly foods to her neighbours. Saharida, who is interested in recipes for healthier cooking alternatives, and lastly a community partner, Kampung Senang, which is a wellness centre which provides upskilling workshops and has a vegetarian kitchen for senior residents. The Social Deck corresponded with the various app features as we hoped that residents who benefit from the physical setup could transition onto the online platform when the physical panels were moved. The green panel, Finding Kaki, introduced the community champions. We saw the champions as assets of the communities and a huge attractor for like-minded residents to gather around. We left space for residents to leave notes and also links for residents to join them on the NUK app or WhatsApp groups. The purple panel for Just Kipo, where the community champions shared tips from their expertise. For example, Martin shared tips on how we could use food scraps as detergent, and Saharida shared recipes to cook healthier alternatives. As with the green panel, we left a portion for residents to leave their own tips as well. Lastly, the yellow panel was left for the community champions to suggest programming according to their own interest and initiative. Martin, who had collected many pre-loved items for redistribution, wanted to do a free pasar corner where residents could come and take second-hand items. This idea was well received with the public, so much so that all the other locations maintained this feature of the free pasar. Though the initial sentiment towards the pasar was hesitation, we began to see that residents took ownership of the space by tidying up the racks by themselves or adding additional shelving for the overflow of items. Many took to their own social networking platforms to share about the initiative. In our second location, Juliana, the food rescuer, used the Social Deck to hold food rescue events that gathered large crowds and many more of her neighbours finding out more about her ongoing initiative and becoming ugly food benefactors. Due to the success of the food drives, another Social Deck partner, Kampung Senang, agreed to host Social Deck at their location and build an ongoing collaboration with Juliana for their vegetarian kitchen. Stemming from the social deck, we saw the creation of many WhatsApp groups to support resident interactions. From item sharing to food rescue, the creation of groups ensured more increased participation between neighbours, fostering sharing economies, mutual aid, and micro-job. The social deck was well received, and even as the social deck moved on, we could see that communities had continued to grow and develop, with Juliana still hosting weekly food rescues and residents setting up their own Pasa corners in social deck's absence. A post survey was conducted to collate the residents' response to social deck. This slide shows all the comments and sentiments towards the social deck, and it expresses how social deck has created a better neighborhood of self-dependency and autonomy to help each other out. This slide shows more residents wanting to be involved with future social deck initiatives and other topics that residents are interested to explore. Overall, the impact of social deck can be summarized as such. Residents are now involved in a sharing economy which helps reduce waste and ensure that those in need can reach out to their local community. Community appreciation as they are more aware of community initiators. Bridging of social divisions. Mutual aid helps to create a united neighborhood regardless of background. Micro-job opportunities. We see this on the WhatsApp groups as it generates micro-job opportunities, and lastly, the formation of new communities. All these actions culminate in a neighborhood with stronger ties to one another. Given the public response, we have also been able to connect champions with local organizations, which continue to work with champions to support and develop their ideas into more permanent initiatives. For the future sustainability of social deck, we are in the midst of establishing a social deck committee which will include local institutions, local organizations, and grown-up groups. The social deck community will oversee future uses of the social deck. In addition to Project Zero and Social Deck, we are also working with another resident group in a younger estate in the northeast of Singapore, Punggol. In this prototype called Cozy, we worked closely with a group of residents we consider as co-producers to design and reprogram the entire void deck space. Cozy is a space conceived by emerging needs of this young population, and in this revamped void deck, it aims to be a shared space for all neighbours to come together. It has 3 main programs: Collab, a co-working space with movable tables and chairs; Commune, a flexible event space which now doubles up as a live streaming area to support the shift towards digital events; Create, an explorative zone targeted for younger residents to explore their interests. With the success of Social Deck, we have also introduced the Give and Take corner here. The design language of the space follows the mesh used in Social Deck as it provides flexibility for space demarcation and future programming. In addition, we have also catered for a digital display to be set up in the space which connects the new Abang Kampung app. Digital display will give users access to see what is happening in their neighborhood and support future events held in the space. With this, creating a new typology of space in the physical and digital realm for neighbours to come together. For both Project Zero and Social Deck, we can see the use of online to offline tools to facilitate community bonding. With the prototypes, we are also able to see the value in transitioning from online to offline realms to ensure sustained community development. To better understand our community enablement framework, we can zoom in to see the interactions between residents. In this diagram, we begin by mapping various online to offline interactions. And as we track the flow of interactions with our physical prototype to online WhatsApp groups or on the NUK app, we can see how online to offline interfacing deepens levels of participation within residents. This same analysis could be used for various parts of the project to show the finer interactions in our framework. In conclusion, our community enablement framework is one that is focused greatly on resident assets. Working with community assets and facilitating the different roles allows residents to be empowered and bringing their communities together, hence ensuring better social resilience against threats. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time.